background in anthropology. I don't consider myself an anthropologist, by the way. And but let's say this is I will start from my neighborhood, as Michele said, that we work on the same topic area. I'll start from exactly that place, and I'm based back here, down here on the left. This is where I live, outside in the white area, let's say. Florence is here on the right side. Here's the city of Prato, an industrial city near Florence, 20 kilometers from Florence. And here's a sort of no man's land, let's say, let's call it like that, between Florence, Prato, and other minor towns. And with this image, I cut out everything you will usually associate with Tuscany. The Tuscan imagery, no, it's more or less something in between the Renaissance city and the beautiful countryside landscape with cypresses, vineyards, and so on. So this is exactly what I don't show you here with this image. And this is the industrial district, on the contrary, which is usually a sort of empty space. Usually this area is perceived as a void. So I decided to cut out what usually is associated with value and to show what usually is cut out because associated with transit. Actually, this is the area you drive through, right, from a place to another. So no man's land and the border itself, I would say, because it's a border between the cities. It's a border between the industrial district and the countryside. You see the green areas. This is a previous rural area, very fertile because it's a plain. And then in the 70s, it's the process of industrialization and building started very, very, very wildly. I would say, and so you see both, right? It's a sort of entanglement of residual rural areas and industrial areas. It's a sort of an entanglement, I would say, and also is a border between different communities. Is an area, for example, many Italians from southern Italy migrated here after the Second World War, while the industrial district was growing. And more recently, myself, I'm half Sicilian, for example, and more recently, a big Chinese community moved in between Florence and Prato, and this actually can be perceived as a sort of city. It's an informal city, right? Michele is a big expert about this this area, and me, I'm just an artist, but I live here, so I'm very identified with this landscape, which is not the Tuscan landscape, the postcard, let's say, created by the tourism industry, food and beverage, movie industry also a lot. And so myself, I'm more identified with this hybrid entanglement of different things. And I will tell you about this area and how I moved around it. So this is usually what the people perceive as about this place, this area. So it's associated with something non-valuable, with something dystopian, mainly because of the Chinese presence, which is perceived in this way, more or less. So when you hear about this area, it's usually about the police doing some control and seizure, confiscating a factory, sorry, of fabrics. Because here, yes, you basically, what the Chinese migrants are doing here, they do clothes, like what you usually buy around the world as made in Italy. Part of it is manufactured in this area. And so it's a dystopian imagery, and also majority of districtualist studies, like in urban industrial studies, I would say, are focusing on this topic here. The Chinese entrepreneurship related with fabrics and fashion and fast fashion, pronto moda, ready to wear, call it as you want. But actually, this is my challenge as an artist. I would say, as a person that inhabiting this area, I embrace this different aspects of the territory and Chinese gardens. So it started. First Chinese gardens appeared in the early 2000s. I would say 15 years ago. It's a very recent phenomenon, and it was at the very beginning. It was like something really small, like a family growing vegetables in the garden, right? Chinese family growing vegetables from China in the garden. So when the seeds were somehow, some relative would arrive from China with some seeds. Here we have a cabbage variety, or like squashes, pumpkins, whatever, right? Bok choy. And they would try to, and they would experiment how it will fit this microclimate, this soil, this area, which is not the same as in China, of course, but we know that vegetables are very adaptable, and human skills as well. And here, this image is after some years. This is not anymore a family garden. This is a little farm, which actually, unfortunately, is not existing anymore in this form here. I will tell you later why. And in this case, was a family business. So the guy with the father and the mother and the cousin that was helping. He's the father of the owner of the business guy who decided to create this farm, and they started growing and selling in the area. So this image, I think, is very beautiful because you have a sort of piece of China transplanted in Tuscany, right? And you see the Tuscan soil nourishing this little sprout, this little plant. And also it's beautiful if you think about sustainability, because these varieties are mainly for the Chinese consumption in the area. It's a big community. We're speaking about thousands and thousands of people. 1/4 of the population it's Chinese in the area of Prato, and you can be sure that if you buy tomatoes to prepare nice Italian pasta, the tomato traveled for hundreds of kilometers. While if you buy a baitai, a Chinese cabbage, it was just growing across the corner, right? So it's a paradox that the local farm, the local agriculture is Chinese, and the Italian agriculture it's completely non-sustainable, and because all the tomatoes, 90% of the tomatoes are cultivated in the southern Italy, right? By the way, despite I felt in love with this image, right? Because it's so powerful, so beautiful. But the dominant narration is this one. So totally different from my enthusiastic perspective. So this was this guy here on the right. Here is a right-wing activist from Florence, because I was showing you this area, this map. I was showing you at the beginning. It's in between Florence and Prato. It's a continuum, right? It's a sort of a rhizomatic structure, like a ginger root, and connecting areas which are usually considered separated. So you will always think about the issues of Florence, the issues of Prato, the issues of Sesto, another town. But this area, from the Chinese perspective, is one big city. And in fact, even the issues are circular, let's say, spreading as a virus from a corner to the other one of this ginger root. And one of the major problems is this kind of xenophobic attitude and narration. So this guy, I said, is a right-wing activist, far right-wing activist from Florence. You see, Firenze today, it's a little television from Florence. Very bad television. By the way, this was enough. He triggered somehow the explosion, right? The epidemic, I would say. So I think here we are 2009. So he went with some journalists. He entered this Chinese farm without permission. He just breaking through. The farmers escaped because you imagine you're farming. You don't even speak Italian, and at some point you have like journalists with big cameras entering with this guy leading them. And so out of this first action, a lot of bad consequences started. And after the narration was dropped in, this xenophobic narration, oh, what are they growing? Look at that. They look like spinaches, but are they spinaches? This was ridiculously, this was his sentence. When he entered the greenhouse and you see the bok choy, he said that. They look like spinaches, but are they spinaches? No, they're not. But it was too late. So actually, in a way, he was somehow seeding the fear, right? Saying, oh, all this weird stuff, what will happen, where they will end up? They will end up in our houses, perhaps. Is this genetically modified? Is this weird? What is this? We don't know. So, by the way, after this media trigger, the forestal police, here you see the guy watching the Chinese aubergine, a bit shocked. So the forestal police took over the situation. The farm was confiscated with no big explanations, right? It's a sort of preventive seizure. So the confiscation is it's there, and the Chinese farmer will not apply to protest and say why, because they prefer to move away and start somewhere else, right? So it started a real war between the farmers and the state apparatus, like the police, the forestal police, carabinieri, forestal carabinieri. We have hundreds of corps, police corps, and so on in Italy, and they were all. And so we start with the media. We end up with the repression, and again the media are somehow enhancing the repression, and of course all this was happening. Especially now we are in 2015, for example, you can see here. So like 5 years after, and here we are 2018, and you see elections 2018. That's not a coincidence. So because every time there are elections, the local municipalities, they want to show the people that something is done against the issue, right? And so all these shits happen every time before the elections. And again, here we are 2009, 2018. So it happened in here we have already 2009, 2015, 2018. And if you look, it always overlaps with elections, often, but and so on. You're right. You have more and more. This is interesting. This is 2019, 2020. Ah, no. Sorry. Okay, here we are with the. So one of my first reactions was to analyze the language that is used by the local media. Just to, and it's pretty shocking. Now it's in Italian, but it's hyper racist. This language is very racist. Like here is written, they are compared with insects, like with or here it's very racist. This farmers with the almond eyes. It means with the Asian somatics, which is a race. It's a racist saying, and don't give up the lands. And these giant salads, punishment, right? This is the language, Blitz. When I showed this in Germany, they were shocked by the use of the term Blitz. This is a German expression, word. And this is terrible, dangerous soils. And also this is pretty impressive. We have to break up, break up on this new form of Oriental entrepreneurship at its very beginning, right? So this is the intention. This is the real. If you analyze the language, you understand why all this happened. Because what is the ideology, right, beneath? And so now I want to reflect about the creation of the landscape, right, and how the landscape is embodying the identity. So when you think about the Tuscan cliche, it's this, right? It's created. It's totally ideological, and it's not something there in nature. It's a creation, right? It's a rural creation, it's an agricultural creation, but it's also ideological creation, advertisement creation, movie creation, like from the movies, right? Under the Tuscan sun, and the tourist industry, and so on. And also literally, it was created historically. Like cypresses here were introduced by rich, usually Northern European business, were like foreigners with money that would buy in the end of 19th century or beginning of 20th century. They would buy a beautiful villa, and then they will decorate the street to look at similar to the imagined Renaissance painting. So the creation of the landscape is something that that took place historically. And so this is why I associated these two images, this cop here, which is really proud, like showing his pride, while defending what? He's defending this created landscape, right? This ideological landscape, because you cannot fit a Chinese farmer here. It's a vitrified, you cannot move anything, right? It's like there forever. It's a Photoshop forever. But as I said, is a cultural creation, is an historical construction. And this is an example of, this was during the fascist time, autarky. So this is another side of the issue, let's say, of the creation of the identity of in the rural context, in the agricultural context. In the fascist time, there was this idea of autarky, which means that Italy was supposed to be independent in terms of food security and industrial resources and everything, because of the embargo, because of the fascist aggression on Ethiopia. So it's a very long story. We don't have time here to go through that. But yes, I want to show this image especially. Here, the Italy, the nation is literally created with something that you will eat, right? So it's like the collective body is created with the nourishment, the food, the vegetables, create that the soil is producing. And so there is a link between blood and soil, right? And this is the core also of the Nazi ideology. And it's very scary to see this germ, this virus, still active nowadays in different forms, so that to protect your identity, to protect your imagined community, you have to eradicate what is not fitting your purified map, let's say here. And so this is also part of my answer. I hope it's all fine with the audio. So my practice is on different levels. So this was just a joke, let's say. I wanted to take a picture instead of the Florentine steak. I wanted to celebrate the Chinese cabbage, xiao bai cai. It's more like a joke, but it's like a game, I would say. But it's a serious one. So why not to celebrate a new community, which is not Italian or Chinese, is both. Is a new society. Is a new community. Tuscan China. In many of my projects, I called it Tuscan China, quoting the name of a restaurant in the 90s in Florence, which nobody wanted to attend because it was not yet, people were not ready for fusion back then, and so it was not fitting the expectations of anyone back then. Tosco Cinese, but I loved it, and so as an homage to this restaurant, I often use this expression Tosco China. This could be a nice propaganda tool for Tuscan China or Wenzhou China, Tuscan Wenzhou, because many of the Chinese are from a specific area of China, and they speak their own language. And so, yeah, I also, oops, sorry, yeah, we are back. I also work with food as it's part of my practices. You know, I work with community, with food, and also to create, to mix stuff and local stuff and create local food. And you go, by creating a local food, by cooking local ingredients, you break the borders, even if you don't want, because this is the real local food is Chinese, right? So whatever you cook locally, you cannot avoid it, right? And this is some sort of hybrid folklore. You see some local folklore, the flaggers. I don't know how to say in English. It's bandieratori. It's an old traditional thing, and then the Chinese dragon in the industrial district, and they can cohabit. And also we can play with and create an hybrid landscape. This landscape is there, but we can celebrate this new landscape, right? So we have the vineyards, the cypresses, they can cohabit with the water bamboo. There is no contradiction. This could be a Photoshop, right? It could be a new Photoshop, yeah, a new collage, but this is real. This is the garden which is not existing anymore, the farm which was confiscated in January this year. Very, very in the wrong timing, really. That was the wrong timing because it was just before the lockdown. And so these 5 hectares, 1 hectare is 100 meter, it's 100 square meter, right? 100 per 100. And imagine 5 hectares is a big, you know, it's a big farm producing food locally. And then it was confiscated. And then the lockdown for the COVID arrived, and there was no food basically because we were locked inside the municipality, and there are 15,000 people and only a little small market. And so, like, I mean, there was food, but you had to wait hours and hours and hours to get food. And 100 meters away, there was a totally abandoned garden. It was really annoying. But let's back to my projects together with the people here. This was a beautiful project for me because it was this was totally outside of the art world. I was just inviting people from the area. I created a sort of clash. It was about the dumpling. So Chinese dumpling is big, right? We all know about jiaozi, and also Italian ravioli is a dumpling, and is also big. And both identities are very connected with this sort of food. But if you look at the procedures and the idea beneath, it's very similar. So you wrap something, and by the way, so I put together let's say, I just created the condition for these people to meet. My role was just invisible at the end, because but it was 1 year. I had to work 1 year with the people, with the local government, with some Chinese business people, which they supported me, and they embraced the idea. So thanks to all of these elements, at the end we had this little miracle, because, as I said, it's a very small area where I live. It's a village, it's a rural area, and it's a provincial, and people are very suspicious and they don't mix. So it's like you have dozens of borders across the village and the countryside, right? Between the Chinese garden, the Italian garden, the neighbors. You have borders everywhere. And these people cohabited in the same area for 20 years without speaking each other for 20 years. And so this was in this case, like, I think 400 people were put together, had the chance to meet. And yeah, if you think about the grandparents of the Italians are these here in the bottom left, these people in the some fascist festival in Prato in the 30s. So this is still there. I mean, we have to think about this fossils, ideological fossils surviving in the behaviors. So when we think about xenophobia or racism, is really layered and structured. So the idea was to show people that at the end, a dumpling is a dumpling, that it can be Chinese, Italian, but at the end, when you are there all together, you want to eat, you have some nice wine, and you start doing stuff, it's much easier. All these, many Italians don't go in this. Imagine, maybe you're more used to cosmopolitan cities, but imagine this context is hyper conservative. So the people will not go to the Chinese restaurant because they're afraid what kind of meat is there, right? People are still thinking in these terms. So I also brought this project in London at the Unidee-Fondazione. Alessandra knows because she was also there, and there it was perceived in a totally different way, like more, it was commodified, but not here. Here it was hyper conflictual. I was threatened. There was a guy saying this guy should. I was threatened online by people, by some local fascists that wanted to revenge against this sort of how you say. It's a religion, is heretic. By the way, sacrilegio in Italian is sacrilegio, sacrilege attitude. So this is the outcome. We have Chinese dumplings, Italian ravioli, and something in between. And it was very normal. This hybrid dumpling, which I put it on Wikipedia, was really sprouted out naturally from this meeting. It was not planned. It was obvious that at some point the people would start to do what they can with their skills, with the ingredients. So maybe the stuffing of the Italian dumpling was over, and so they put the Chinese stuffing, and the dough was the Italian dough, and the skills were like, I don't know, second generation Chinese or third generation Chinese are not very good in dumplings, and maybe are very good in ravioli. Yeah. So we ended up with all kind of mixtures. And it was, of course, delicious. And here are some images of this, when the borders got smashed. And then I did this project in other contexts. For example, at the Delfina-Fondazione, it was perceived in a more culinary thing. But again, I was, for example, in Delhi, and it was again more. There was more friction because I was in a neighborhood of Delhi with a lot of racial conflicts, especially between the locals, the kind of non-locals, because the locals were Muslims and they were exiled in Pakistan during the partition of India and Pakistan. So to say local in this area of Delhi is really not correct. But let's say the old migrants were not accepting the new migrants, and so there was a huge conflict. So here I was doing these dumplings with this guy here is a Nepalese, second generation, born in Delhi, and the guys are from different parts of Somalia, and they are refugees. And this other guy here, this is another same neighborhood but another day. This guy is a Tibetan, second generation or third generation, Indian Tibetan. And so, and the dumpling is somehow, it's crossing all the borders, and every time it's embodying a difference, right? It's sort of collecting differences during its journey through the borders, through different identities. And it's a paradox that everyone wants appropriate dumpling, and so we have the Russian dumpling, the Chinese dumpling, the Uzbek dumpling, the Georgian dumpling, and so on. But then, if you look at the dumplings, it's a continuum of little mutations. This was in Poland. This mutated again. The dumpling mutated again, because this was a vegan squatter anarchist in southern Poland. Squat. I was a guest in a squat, and so we were doing the vegan dumpling. But the day before, they had a fight with police, so it was a pretty surreal situation. Eating vegan food, but the guy had all his hands, wounded because of the fight the day before, by the way. And so, yeah, this is the drawing, one of my many drawings that are lost forever. I don't know. I think this was still in Delhi somewhere. And this is a hypothetical journey of the dumpling and how the dumpling is moving around Eurasia, Europe and Asia. And this is a little story which is also connected with Fondazione Pistoletto, because this was also a lecture performance I did there many years ago. This is an image from Prato, and this is a vegetable. The scientific name is Lagenaria, but we are not interested. I'm not interested in Latin names. I'm interested in dialects and different languages. So this in Chinese, in Wenzhouhua, which is the dialect of the people that live in Prato, is named Pugua. And in my family, my Sicilian family is named Cucuzza. And so these vegetables is embodying totally different stories similar and different geographies, similar stories of migrations. And basically this is an image that my cousin sent me many years ago, saying, look, Leone, there are cucuzzas in the Chinese shops in Prato. How it's possible? Because for us, cucuzza was something, because our family, it's originally from Sicily, but I was born in Florence, in Tuscany. And so I consider myself Tuscan, I would say. Not even, but I was not considering myself Sicilian. But I remember that in my childhood, this vegetable was really was present in our summers, family meals, suppers and dinners. And my grandmother used to grow it in our garden. And for many years, this cucuzza was arriving, the seeds were shipped from Sicily to Tuscany, and we were growing it. And it's really like beautiful for children, because it grows very fast. It looks like a snake. It's climbing. It's really fun. And then I discovered that the Chinese had the same variety. And I was very shocked, because for us was the mark of us being a bit different, because we only eat this vegetable. You cannot find it in the shops, except in Sicily, but in Italy you don't see this usually, except if there are Chinese, sorry, nice lapsus, if there are Sicilian migrants. So you can see this in Turin, but you can be sure that there is a Sicilian guy that moved maybe in Turin to work in the Fiat in the 50s, and he's still growing the cucuzzas from his great-grandfather from the village in Sicily. And then I research online, and I realize there is a cucuzza connection between different people, and usually it's something more explicit in the migration context. So, like, for example, my family in Sicily, they don't, for them it's a daily thing. It's not a symbol. It's not the meaning. There is no meaning, right? It's something good and you eat it. That's it. And it's good in summer because it's cooling down. But in all the migrated part of my family, there is this sort of cucuzza obsession, and I realized that this is also, like, all these images are, majority of them are Italian Americans. You see this girl here, these are all Italian Americans that are growing cucuzzas in the States. And this is a bit embarrassing even. This is Italian community, Italian American community in California, and every year they do this macho style cucuzza drill team. And they first eat pasta, and then you see the spotted t-shirts, and then they dress like Italians, and then they do this parade showing the cucuzzas as guns. I don't agree with this, but it's very interesting from an anthropological perspective, I would say. While this is the cucuzza flower, very poetic, which is blossoming on the rooftops in all American cities where Sicilians migrated. And not only Sicilians, so also many. I learned that not only Chinese and Sicilians, but also in India, it's named Loki. It's really spread at the end. This I was in Warsaw. Speaking about borders, I was in the periphery of Warsaw in Poland, and there is a big. The first image I was showing you with this map. There is something similar there, the same type of urban construction, industrial, and it's named Volka Kosowska. Yeah, Volka Kosowska, and it's a originally was a Vietnamese area with shop with industrial buildings and trade and so on, and then Chinese also arrived, and this is how I was there for pho, to eat the pho soup, because you can have the best pho in Poland, which is the traditional Vietnamese soup. So I was there looking for the pho, and then I saw the Chinese writings, and it means fresh fish Italia in Poland. I was a bit confused. Why fresh fish Italian fresh fish in Poland? What is this? And then this is Vietnamese alphabet. And then I entered the shop, and I met my neighbor, my former neighbor from Prato, that she moved in Poland, and so her brother is still based near my place, and he's growing this is a type of cucuzza shaped like a pear, but it's still a cucuzza. And so she's proudly importing Italian Chinese cucuzza to Poland from our neighborhood. And this for me was the achievement, let's say, and where all the borders got thrown in the put on the side, let's say, like violated, crossed, let's say. And these are some other images. I don't know, we have still some time. These are some more images from my neighborhood. It's also very interesting how the farmers from China interpret the new environment. They're very creative. So, for example, this is a greenhouse created with some. This is again the farm that was confiscated. They created the arches using some local reeds, not even bamboo, and then the same structure was used in summer as a pergola for these Chinese beans. I was like admired by the skills and the inventiveness, the creativity of these farmers, and somehow for them it's also because this image is it's very relevant to me. So it's the same day. You can see I'm dressed in the same way. I was just crossing this border between the farm of this guy and the farm of Mr. Hu, and the border is just a little less than a river. You can jump it, and they are both farmers, and the Italian guy never moved from this area, so he's trying to apply the skills of his father and grandfather, and the skills he's applying are not working anymore because the climate mutated meantime. And every time I visit him, it's so sad because he's like the last witness of an era of the rural, economy that was going on for centuries and thousands of years, and now it's crashed, and all the knowledge, the traditional knowledge, is not applying anymore to the present. While the other guy, Mr. Hu, moved from China to Italy, and so he had to reset his entire set of knowledges. So he started relearning from the climate, observing, and not from the knowledge, traditional knowledge, because in the case of Mr. Hu, there is a tabula rasa, right? The moment you move from a place to another, it's like a tabula rasa, because the climate is different, the soil is different, and so you're aware that all your background is not applied. You cannot apply it here and now. And so he's more fast and experimental. While the Italian guy, it's more pretty desperate every time and say, oh, it's not working anymore like it used to be. Why it's rotting everything. It's pretty, and it's funny also because they are neighbors and they observe each other. And I always I often ask the guy, because there is even some sort of the Italian guy is admired by the Chinese one. Admiring the Chinese neighbor because his vegetables are more beautiful, and so it's a bit jealous also. And sometimes I ask him, "Have you ever tried?" No, never. He's not interested in trying, but he's observing. And at the same time, these pumpkins, he's giving me this. You see, even in my background, there are some sort of the same varieties as the Lagenaria, and these are named hulu in Chinese, and we call it juca da pesce, the fish pumpkin, because in the past they were used by the fishermen to put the fish and keep them alive and fresh. And somehow this old Italian guy, is also keeping, despite he never moved from his place and is a bit desperate because the climate is mutated around him. But at the same time, he was keeping the seeds of this variety of Moroccan, that's according to him, pumpkin for since the 50s. So he gave me the seeds, saying, Leone, now I'm old. It's your turn to reproduce the seeds. And remember, the fisherman gave it to me in 54. So do your job. And this is a pumpkin from Morocco, he said. So he's also part of this global journey of seeds, because at the end the seeds are there's an old fresco showing how the fishermen will use the gourd. It's from the Villa Medicea here nearby of Poggio a Caiano. So yes, the journey of seeds. This is an image from a workshop of mine with the kids. I was trying to use the seeds as a metaphor of the global citizenship. Here we have gourds that somehow moved from Africa to Americas, floating on the ocean before Cristoforo Columbus was even born. And so the journey of pumpkins was even more ancient than the journey of humans through the Siberia and Alaska. And so it's even challenging the idea that the European discovery, not only is challenging the idea that Europeans discover America, but that the humans discover America. So this is actually the only vegetable which is present all over the world because of his capability to travel across the sea and preserve the seeds. So seeds as a metaphor of border crossing, of impossibility of identity, let's say. And seeds are vessels to ship, to move information, genetic information across geographies, across anthropologies. And these are just images of my work, of my practice, which is also related to Fondazione Pistoletto, because in Fondazione Pistoletto, I created the bank of all the seeds of different migrant communities in Italy. So my work was not confined, it's not confined in this area, because then I traveled in Palermo for Manifesta. I did a garden there for Manifesta 12, and I worked with the farmers from Bangladesh. I have friends from Senegal. They're farming near Venice. There are Bengalese farmers in Rome and so on. Other Chinese farmers in Piedmont near Biella as well. This was my garden in Manifesta. It's to eat. I also, when I'm part of art projects, I also grow to feed myself, but also to reproduce the seeds. So every act of farming is for me an act of care, of the learning, and somehow, and relearning from different people, from different cultures. So there's not a knowledge, or knowledges, and then I reproduce the seeds. So the plants are using me also to perpetuate their genes, because we always think that we use the plants, we domesticated the plants, but it's also true the other way around. So I have to speed here. This is in Prato. It's an exhibition, 2012, very old one. This was supported by the Chinese Buddhist temple in Prato. Just some nice, funny images. Here we are in Palermo for Manifesta. And again, in Palermo, I realized that identity is an ideological assumption that you have to crash. And if you observe nature and plants, the borders are just ridiculous, very recent creation, and they will not last even. And here in Palermo, it was really exciting because I work with the farmers. He's the grandfather of a Sicilian artist I became friend with, and this is a guy from the Philippines, which also became friends, and all together we created this garden, basically inside the Botanic Garden of Palermo. And this is a guy that is from Bangladesh. He used to be a teacher of mathematics in Bangladesh, and now he moved to Italy looking for money, and now he's farming and selling vegetables, Bengalese vegetables in Palermo. This is part of my shelter. So basically, my work ended up in creating these very fragile shelters, very precarious, because I wanted them to be like that. Because you can even create beautiful, solid structures with bamboo, but I don't want that. I want to create very fragile shelters, and all these gourds from different seeds, from different communities that moved to Italy or moving around Italy, or even Italians that moved in France as migrants, or Switzerland. In fact, there is also here one of these plants is a Sicilian cucuzza that moved from Sicily in Switzerland and then back with migrants, and then back to Sicily. So basically, it was one of the producers of Manifesta that is a Swiss Italian from Sicily, and then he asked his uncle to give him some seeds, and we grow them in the. And this is the final act. Let's say when I emptied one of the gourds, I stuffed it with all the seeds from the garden, and I dropped it in the ocean. At the end of Manifesta, this was November 2018, and this was October 2019. So one of the gourds traveled through the Mediterranean, perhaps till the UK just after the Brexit. No, it's a joke. I'm joking. I was there, and I was it just before the Brexit or right after? I don't remember. I think after. Yeah. So that's it. So we end up with this. Let's say that we want to finish with this image of the cucuzza that fictionally traveled across the ocean to challenge the Brexit project. Yeah. So I can stop sharing the screen, perhaps. It was a bit strange because I was not able to see you.
But we're here. Thank you, Leone. Grazie. It's very interesting. I already have a lot of things to ask, but I guess also the students. But it's better if we have a very short break, like 5 minutes or something like that, just to smoke a cigarette and think about the questions. Okay?
Good. Bene, bene.
Then we can come back, and as we did this morning, just to collect all the questions, and so then you have the time for answering properly to everything. Okay?
So soon in 5 minutes, yes?
Yes, a little bit, something like that. Yes, 5 minutes.
Bene.
Okay?
Ciao.
Ciao.